The International Volleyball Academy has been feeding you volleyball content so diligently all year long that one could say it's taken up permanent residence in your home. Week after week, it has brought you not only glimpses into the world of top-level volleyball, but also guides on how to learn specific skills in this beautiful sport. And since you've sent us quite a few questions over the year and we've only answered them briefly in passing, we've decided not to leave it like that. From today's episode onward, we'll begin to make up for our methodological sins. And who will be helping us do that? Allow us to introduce them.
I'm Matthew. I'm not a real person created by artificial intelligence, but I'll be voicing the most curious questions from people who've never played volleyball but would like to learn a bit.
And I'm Martina, a real coach of flesh and blood, although here I appear as my own digital twin. The real Martina coaches just like Zdenek and Helena, but she also works because she's not a full-time coach. And unlike Matthew, I'll be voicing the perspectives of coaches from small clubs, just like me.
Many of your questions were about the very beginnings, when someone first touches the ball with their fingertips and doesn't yet know whether they did it right. So let's go back and revisit a few of them.
For example, I'd like to know how to learn to set with your fingers without making mistakes.
Even the magical Argentine de Checo, the master of setting sorcery, doesn't do it without mistakes. But you know, I can show you the way. Not a shortcut, more like a winding path that will eventually lead you to setting correctly and with precision. But we have to start from scratch, from the very foundation of the house that should one day stand firmly on these basics.
Learning to set with your fingers begins with getting a feel for the ball. First using what we call the playing joint, then all the fingers, proper grip, and lifting the ball above the head.
And what exactly is the playing joint?
The playing joint is the spot where the index finger transitions into the palm.
Is this the correct spot?
Yes, exactly there. And that spot must always make contact with the ball during a finger set. In practice, it looks like this. We also train the correct hand position with a kind of dribble against the ground, using the same wrist position we'll use later to set. We start in a kneeling position and later move to standing. We emphasize active use of 3 and then 2 main fingers, the index finger and the thumb.
I'm wondering, why do we do dribbling on the ground when practicing setting?
This dribbling actually mimics the leg movement used during a proper upward ball release.
And that leads us to the next step in training. We've gotten a feel for the ball, and now we start to push into it. The key is what the thumbs and index fingers are doing. We lovingly call this drill the 2-finger tap. It's not just a play on words. Just like another exercise we call the prayer, it helps us progress toward correct ball catching and release. And throwing is the foundation of setting.
Why do kids start by throwing when they're learning to set with their fingers? Shouldn't they just learn it the correct way from the start?
That would be true, if it worked that fast. But in practice, one of 2 bad habits tends to sneak in early on. Either the hands slam into the ball, or they catch it and throw. We always choose throwing, because as kids grow stronger and their hands get bigger, the contact with the ball naturally shortens and eventually becomes a proper elastic set. Slamming into the ball, we call it jabbing, never turns into good technique. These 2 12-year-old setters just went through setting school from grabbing to setting. And today, they're among the best in Czechia's U16.
I've seen that you often use basketballs during your training sessions. Why is that?
Yes, the basketball, a heavier round friend, does one important thing. It naturally pushes kids' thumbs downward without them having to think about it. At the same time, it imprints into their hands the feeling of the ball rolling in the wrist and a release that isn't forced.
And what if kids' fingers hurt when setting? Are they doing something wrong? Or do they just need to get used to it?
It's more that they need to get used to it. But it shouldn't really hurt. If the ball is first absorbed by the wrist and then released with a spring motion. When the spring works properly, the fingers don't suffer. But it takes time. It just needs to be played out through repetition.
And how do I know if it was a correct, clean set? Does it make a sound, or is it something you just feel?
Sound can help, but you'll recognize cleanness more by feel. The ball shouldn't bounce from one hand to the other or linger in the palms. But top setters sort of throw the ball too. They just do it quickly. The ball barely touches their fingers before it's gone.
Why do kids train their legs in volleyball? Isn't it mainly about the hands?
Actually, no. The legs are the foundation. You can strengthen them through athletics, for example, but what matters most is that they take you where you need to be in time during the game. That's why we have Red Mini Volleyball. It teaches movement for the coach and without a word.
And why is bumping not allowed in Red Mini Volleyball?
Because if you can't use a forearm pass, you're left with only your fingers. And if you want to get to every ball with your fingers, you have to move like a weasel. That's the magic of it.
I'm not sure my kids are ready for Red Mini Volleyball. I don't want to discourage them. Can you tell me how to know whether they'll manage and enjoy it?
If they've reached the age of 9, they're ready for Red Mini Volleyball, provided they can move around a bit without tripping over their own feet. But please don't expect proper technique right away. Let them slap the ball. Yes, slap it. As if they were playing in a meadow with a ball that flew over the fence. And stick with it. This is not about perfect setting, it's about footwork. And they don't need to be formally taught that. They'll learn it through play, especially through Red Mini Volleyball without the forearm pass. So you won't discourage them if you give them the joy of playing and don't burden them with technical pressure.
If a child positions their hands correctly but the ball still doesn't go where it should, is it their fault?
When you make a mistake, it's always your responsibility. But first, we have to define what a mistake is. An inaccurate pass, a poor decision, all of that is simply information and we need to work with it. Definitely don't scold kids for making mistakes, but don't ignore them either. Just work with the mistake.
At first, our kids often push the ball from their neck area, not above their head. That's not what we want, right?
You mean that bad habit where kids let the ball drop so low it slides around their head, sometimes even down to the neck? Yes, that's what we want to avoid. As we've said before, we start kids with throwing, but with one crucial condition. The ball must not drop too low. In other words, they should throw using the forearm and especially the wrist, not the whole arms.
If I practice passing against a wall, will that help me in an actual match? Isn't that a completely different situation?
You're right, it is a completely different situation. In a match, a player has to make decisions. Against a wall, you don't. And yet, the wall is the best teacher. It doesn't forgive you or lie to you. With setting, it's not too tricky, but with hitting, for example, the wall can really punish you. The wall definitely belongs in training, but only as support. The wall won't teach you how to play, but it will help you automate the movement.
Our kids still don't have ideal forearm passing technique in Orange Volleyball. As a coach, should I be strict and correct them immediately, or should I let them keep playing and continue working on it through training?
You actually answered your own question. Yes, games teach through play, and skills develop through training. And of course, the two overlap. Sometimes the game supports skill learning, and sometimes training allows for play, like two rivers that occasionally merge into one.
If I understand correctly, I should never stop the game because of a mistake and instead let the kids enjoy playing. But what about the mistakes?
Please don't interfere with the game, because the game belongs to the players while the training belongs to you. And when I say players, I mean children too. They don't play to be perfect. They play to enjoy and explore. If you step into their game with corrections, you're essentially saying, "Kpis, stop playing and start fixing yourself." But we don't want that. The technical corrections belong in training, not matches. The game has its own rhythm and joy, which we won't spoil with adult worries about correct movement. That's all for today, but don't worry, we'll get to more questions next time. Take care.